This week in Latitudes, we finish our fishing trip of Samoa with Steve Cooper. Then we take an expedition to the Coral Sea in search of sharks. And while the sun's still out, we wander through the Cairo Museum and see some of their hidden treasures. The sound, smell and sight of steam trains in today's modern society never ceases to amaze. Here in Tasmania, Australia, there is a remarkable working model of one of the most interesting types in the world. The original service was installed to service the Mount Lyell copper mine at the turn of the century and ran for over 70 years. The terrain of the northwestern Tasmanian wilderness defied the use of conventional railway concepts. The steep, treacherous terrain and impenetrable forest forced the use of the German-designed AP system for the steep inclines and declines. The system used not only the driven wheels of the locomotive, but also a rack and pinion gear onto a third rail to negotiate the steeper sections of the line. The service provided the only means of getting from Queenstown to Strahan and their surrounds. As such, the railway became the lifeblood not only for the mine, but also for the community of the area, and spawned many towns along its route. The restoration of the system first began in the 1980s, and volunteers began restoring the line. The West Coast Wilderness Railway began initial runs in 2001, and the end of 2002 saw the entire project completed to its full 34-kilometre length from Queenstown to Strahan. Today, every trip has a full complement of railway buffs and keen-eyed tourists filling the handcrafted carriages. Trips can be made from either end, or even a one-way trip with coach return legs. Leaving Queenstown, the train travels past some of the original miners' houses, across the Queen River and the first of more than 40 bridges. The first stop for the tourists is Lynchford, the site of the Queen River gold mines. Passengers today have the opportunity to try a little prospecting or panning for themselves, somehow always with good results. The train then heads off again for the trip to Halls Creek, then to the start of the rack rail, which assists the engine to pull its load up the 1 in 16 gradient. Here is truly spectacular scenery, steep ravines falling away from the line as the train climbs through the dense rainforest of predominantly myrtle and the leatherwood trees. Then it's on through the 1 in 20 and in places 1 in 12 descent to the halfway point of Double Barrel. If passengers thought they'd already seen the best ravines on the way up here, the rest of the trip through Rhine-Diemer now brings gasps of amazement.
Let you enjoy this beautiful scenery that Mother Nature has given to you. And when we get closer to the gorge, we'll talk to you a little bit more about that. Enjoy the view and we'll be back with you shortly.
Somewhere down there is Sailor Jack Creek, hundreds of feet below, hidden by the rainforest. The line is now connected by bridges and trestles, many as long as they are high. Sailor Jack Creek empties into the King River, and the line follows the sheer walls with more cutting and more bridges. Arrival at Double Barrel signals time for lunch from the buffet car from Strahan. As the engine moves to the turntable, more photo opportunities occur. There are also options for a rainforest walk. Most of the drivers are, as you would expect, men around middle age, but there is a surprising number of younger people also playing their part in this resurrection of the era of steam. Passengers from Strahan on the diesel train now transfer to the steam loco for their trip to Queenstown. and the steam passengers transferred to the diesel for their trip to Strahan. It took 3 long, hard years for the major construction of the railway, only marginally faster than the original construction 100 years ago. Here in Lower Landing, the train still services the transport needs of forestry and beekeepers in the area. On Tupukina Plateau, Forestry Tasmania sees to their protection of the state's unique hewn pine, which was used in the colony's early boat building industry. This young hewn pine could be alive and well in another 2,000 years. Back on the train, we cross the King River via the now fully restored Iron Bridge at Tupukina. The line now follows the King River almost at water level and eventually heads towards Strahan and Macquarie Harbour's Regatta Point. Regatta Point was the original Apt Railway's terminus. Today, the West Coast has so much to offer the visitor, not the least of which is this outstanding railway. All passengers who've ridden in this unique steam achievement offer unanimous praise for this superb experience. The Egyptian Museum is one of the most visited buildings in the world. The exhibits here are regularly rotated to maintain the high level of interest for the thousands of visitors who come here annually. Occasionally, though, even the curators here are surprised by the extent of the museum's stockpile. The basement of the Egyptian Museum has recently been the centre of excavation efforts by Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities, or the SCA. After digging and rummaging around in the basement, the SCA came across a cache of hidden treasure. This got the SCA Secretary-General, Dr. Zahi Hawass, thinking that there might be more treasures in other storage rooms. To the surprise of all, when other possible storage rooms were checked, more treasures were found. These unique artefacts have never been shown before, and had spent their recent history in the basement of the Cairo Museum. In total, all the digging in the basement of the museum revealed about 250 pieces that had never been on display before. Some of the items found even included rare royal statues. These treasures were prepared for public display during 2002, on the occasion of the 100th anniversary of the Egyptian Museum. A huge celebration was attended for the anniversary, with the revealing of the hidden treasures from the basement as its centrepiece. Among the artefacts on display at the Hidden Treasures exhibition is an ivory headrest, which supported the mummified head of King Tutankhamun, and gold jewellery from the boy king's tomb that was discovered in 1922. Statues, tablets, coffins, and a wooden prosthetic toe attached to a 3,000-year-old mummified foot are also on display at the exhibition. The artefacts contained in the tomb of Tutankhamun, who ruled Egypt in the 14th century BC, took almost 10 years to remove from the site discovered by British archaeologist Howard Carter. The key artefacts, such as the boy king's stunning gold death mask, are on permanent display. But others were virtually reburied under the museum's vast collection of 160,000 artefacts, which officials say is the largest in the world. Some aspects of another recent find will soon be on display. Colossal statues, sunken ships, gold coins and jewellery are among the treasures newly uncovered by a French marine archaeologist in the submerged ancient city of Heraklion off the Egyptian coast. Marine archaeologist Frank Goddio announced the discovery of the city itself in mid-2000. Divers had located many of the underwater objects using a special acoustic device, accurate to within half an inch. This had enabled them to uncover superb artefacts, ranging from bronze vessels to gold coins and jewellery. Among the finest were a glazed attic bowl and gold earrings, both from the 4th century BC, as well as an incense burner and hundreds of coins, mostly from the late Pharaonic and Ptolemaic periods. 10 closely bunched shipwrecks indicated the location of Herakleon's once teeming harbour and its calamitous fate. The archaeologist believes Heraklion, recorded as a key port at the mouth of the Nile in ancient times, was destroyed by an earthquake or similar sudden catastrophic event. The Frenchman has been documenting and mapping the antiquities discovered by his team of divers with the help of advanced electronic technology. Among the most remarkable is an intact black granite stela, or inscribed slab, almost identical to one found in 1899 that now reposes in the Cairo Museum. The port was quite an important city because it was a port of entry to Egypt and major customs post at the mouth of the Nile before Alexandria itself was founded in 331 BC. The perfectly preserved stela, 6.5 feet high, bolsters the archaeologist's case for identifying the ruined city as Egypt's Heraklion, once the stuff of legend more than history. Godio's team found 3 huge pink granite statues, one of the Nile god Hapi, the others of an unidentified pharaoh and queen. They lay on the seabed near a granite shrine, or naos, with hieroglyphics from the Ptolemaic era, showing that it was the sanctuary in a temple to the supreme god Amun, apparently the great temple of Heraklion. Cairo Museum is unique, not only because it was built as a museum 100 years ago, but also because it contains treasures, artifacts, mummies, and many of the major and important statues that have ever been found. When you're travelling through Egypt, the museums of Cairo and the surrounds are well worth the time to soak up such ancient history. The Museum of Cairo is said to be the only place you can actually smell history. While visiting Samoa, Steve Cooper, one of Australia's most prolific fishing writers and sports fishermen, took the short drive along the coast road to view some of the sights of this tropical paradise. One of the stops Steve couldn't resist was the restored home of his favourite writer, Robert Louis Stevenson, the Villa Vialima. Stevenson, most remembered for his fictional work of Treasure Island, Kidnapped, and The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, was at the height of his powers when he died suddenly of a stroke here in 1894. He had moved to the warmer climes of the South Pacific as his failing health due to tuberculosis declined. The home has been fully restored and now houses much of the writer's memorabilia. Many of the original period furniture pieces have also been restored. On the trip back to Apullo, Steve spied one of the locals selling something very familiar. The friendliness of all the locals here is one memory that Steve will always cherish.
Keep the flies off. Oh, that's good. That's good.
Steve's appointment in Apullo was with Alfred's Fishing Charters. These are run directly from the main harbour. Using the smaller boat allows for a more personal approach in the types of charter. Originally, Steve was going to try spinning lures in amongst the reef outcrops, but Alfred promised to show him some of his own special areas for sports fishing. After a brief trip just out of the main harbour, Steve's lure was taken by a large pelagic wahoo. These predatory fish cruise the open areas in both deep and shallow water. No sooner was the wahoo released and the boat back underway again than the lure was again attacked, this time by a group of small yellowfin tuna.
Alright. We got a small yellowfin on here, about 10, maybe 15 kilos.
Even though being relatively close to the shore, the bottom topography drops quite significantly in this tropical paradise. Many times during his stay here, Steve was surprised to find over 300 feet of water, not more than a stone throw from shore. Steve had already decided to keep a small amount of his day's catch for dinner that night, and as a gift to Alfred and his family for sharing with him such outstanding fishing.
Thank you. Keep him on ice.
Some fishermen are well known for improving the truth, but Steve's time in Samoa can only be described as the perfect Pacific paradise. Robert Torelli from Blue Water International runs small tours for dedicated adventure seekers to the outer edges of the Great Barrier Reef. The large distances travelled in the Coral Sea tours and the requirements of each particular group play a large part in determining the vessel for each expedition. However, quality and passenger comfort is always of prime concern. Many outer reefs are visited and most of the travelling is done overnight. However, shorter distances are sometimes covered during the day. Which gives travellers time to appreciate the vastness and nature of the Coral Sea. Many of the coral and sand keys are very small and barren. However, the larger ones tend to be a haven for birdlife. It's likely that this turtle has just finished laying her eggs, and it was interesting to note her damaged rear flipper, which was probably the result of a tiger shark attack. The Coral Sea is definitely a place which never fails to surprise even the most travelled and experienced diver. This pod of minke whales swam past the Kanimbla after Rob's visit to the Sand Key. Robert's trips attract local and international travellers. On this trip, a world-renowned underwater photographer requested a shark expedition be organised. Many and varied pursuits can be fitted into each adventure, from reef fishing and photography to exploration and blue water hunting. However, some people participate just for the overall adventure. These shallow reefs, which are seldom visited, yield many prized table fish, like big coral trout, as well as large numbers of school trevally. As always, after some fast action, the divers' activities come to the sharks' attention. Small reef sharks don't usually present problems to divers, but do like to hang around, hoping for an injured fish trying to escape. Many terrains are encountered in the shallow reefs, from steep reef faces to vast sand meadows, and experienced hunters usually take varied styles of equipment with them. In a short time, the divers are back on board the Kanimbla with their catches. Some of these fish will be used to draw in the larger sharks for the photographic expedition. After an extensive dive brief, the participants looking for sharks begin readying their gear. The briefing ensures all divers and crew know what to expect and how to act once in the presence of a large shark. It can take many hours to attract a suitable shark, but on this occasion, a large tiger shark appeared in around 45 minutes. Years of experience and careful planning allow for these interactions to be carefully and very safely managed.
Tuna frames off the other sparrows, and we'll get our slick going, and when they come in and start feeding, that's when we'll take turns getting in the water, one man at a time, and hopefully we'll get some really good action today. We'll have some bait right up on the step as well, and hopefully we'll be able to sort of tease them in and get nice and close. Now, make sure that you don't swim aggressively.
After an experience like this, most travellers now hold the sharks in awe and readily accept them for what they are. the masters of their environment, and not the mindless eating machines they're portrayed as.
Nice and clean.
Good. Absolutely fantastic.
Later in the day, some other delicacies are gathered for dinner.
They have a mechanical winch to pull them up.
In the sandy areas between the reefs or in the lagoon proper, these spanner crabs make their home. In such places as the outer reef areas, they occur in large abundance, and the minimal number taken by passing boats has little impact. While changing locations, some time can be spent trying a bit of trolling. This practice can yield many table favourites. The smaller catches of the prized yellowfin tuna are perfect for sashimi delicacies, and it doesn't get any fresher. Even dragging small lures at the new location draws amazing results. This large wahoo was captured while trying to retrieve a lure after fishing for coral trout. The spanner crab nets are collected at the end of the day. The size limits and quotas are strictly adhered to in the course of managing the area's resources. The coral sea gives the divers many opportunities to view a large number of shark species. The next day, this hammerhead moved in to take the fisherman's burley. Despite losing their burley, the divers enjoyed the interaction with this seldom encountered species. Many blue water hunters venture to the coral sea for that once-in-a-lifetime experience of landing a trophy game fish, such as this large dog-toothed tuna. However, the burley and the fighting game fish inevitably attract the whaler family. These small reef sharks generally don't prove to be a problem, preferring to clean up the diver's burley trail. The expeditions run by Robert Torelli, whether for photography, fishing or the sheer experience, are truly adventures at their best. Join Latitudes again when we next trek the globe and explore fabulous and exciting holiday destinations. For further information regarding any story on this episode, log on to www.pbtv.com.au. This program is proudly supported by PATA and Always Dive Australia.